In today's video, I'm answering a question. That question being, can you tweak down Cyberpunk 2077 so low that it'll run on just 1 GB of VRAM? Right, so this here is one of the last and final graphics cards they made with just 1 GB of VRAM. Now we have covered this in its own video, but today I want to run Cyberpunk on just 1 GB of VRAM. And if there was one card to do it on, it's gonna be this one. So why don't we get this plugged in, and I'm gonna go over our plans for the day. Now my goal today is to not just have Cyberpunk running, but we're gonna have it running well on this card. Well, every time we get Cyberpunk launching on bad cards, people say, oh, that's good. So why don't we try and really push it to its limits with just 1 GB of VRAM. I want to see 60 FPS out of this. I've also never tried dabbling around or tweaking Cyberpunk, but come on, let's be honest. It's a game. We've got to be able to tweak it down. I wonder how bad we can make it look. So pretty much the entire plan is today, we're going to get the card set up, we're going to launch straight into Cyberpunk first thing, see how it runs on 1 GB of VRAM out of the box, and then after that, we are going to tweak things down till we get 60 FPS, because it's been a little while since we did one of these low VRAM challenges, and given I'm away on my hollybobs, I figured this would be a good way to round off the month and the week. So despite this showing up as the Radeon R7 370, this is a HD 7850, all the full power of 7850, crippled down through just 1 GB of GDDR5. So we've got all the APIs we need to run Cyberpunk, we have all the power we need to run Cyberpunk, we just don't have the VRAM that we should really be using to run Cyberpunk. So why don't we see what it does if we just straight up launch the game. So we are here with Cyberpunk. As you can see, we are under 1 GB of VRAM right now on the menu screen, but all I'm going to do is go into settings and we are going to put the game down to its default options. So if we go to graphics, what does the game want us to run at? Low preset and a few options set up to medium. Alright, I can take that. And what we'll do is we will just run it through the benchmark like this. Now, I'm not too sure what resolution this is at, especially with FSR running, but it is hovering around sort of 22 to 23 FPS during this internal section of the benchmark. Honestly, this is probably the closest it is to actual gameplay is this section here. So I'm going to say it's going to hover around the mid-20s and probably go up to just north of 30 FPS once it goes outside. Is our VRAM usage going to drop? It does drop quite dramatically. It dropped by 15-20 megabytes. Which, that's quite a lot when you've only got a gigabyte. But it is just running at sort of in and around 30 FPS. So I wonder what happens when we go in-game. It must be said, it does look pretty hideous. It is using an old version of FSR, which apparently is how the game wants to run, and it's back down to dropping to the mid-20s now we're actually outside. Which I'd imagine a lot of that is VRAM related. So what was our overall score? Okay, just under a 27 FPS average, which isn't terrible. That's actually better than I was expecting. It is also running in 1024 by 768. What happens if we actually load a save and go in-game though? What's our kind of actual gameplay figure? We want to make this playable in-game, and it's running it in and around 20 to 25 FPS. Oh, we did actually hit 31 there for a second. It doesn't look great, it must be said. I'd imagine a lot of this is FSR's doing, but we do have a baseline figure to work from. We are getting a sub 30 FPS experience with FSR and the game set to its low preset. So something tells me we're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking. In fact, we might have to do quite a bit of tweaking. But hey, it does launch on 1 GB. It doesn't crash. At least I don't think it crashes. Maybe I'll play through a little bit of it, just double check that it doesn't mysteriously crash on us. That can happen with these lower VRAM cards in these more intensive games, but Cyberpunk in the modern day is actually a decently well optimized title. Admittedly one that probably wants sort of more power than this. Right, does Cyberpunk have an INI file? I'm a little bit curious. Okay, so I've been doing a little bit of snooping around, and inside local CD Projekt Red, Cyberpunk 2077 is our user settings.json. And I'm just looking through to see what kind of settings do exist in here. So we've got the FSR options, these are in here. There's even FSR 4. Our game's defaulted to FSR 2. And I'm just looking through to see what kind of settings we've got. Okay, so we've got shadow mesh quality. Yeah, so this is our settings. Alrighty then. what I'm going to get doing is I'm going to start reading through these, and we're going to see just how much tweaking needs to be done to get this down to as low VRAM usage as possible. So we want to go from 20 FPS to as close to 60 as we can on 1 GB of VRAM, and we're going to see if it is at all possible. So I'm going to get started on this, and hopefully it's actually going to work. Now, I'm not going to recap what graphics card we're using, because if you want to find out more, there is an entire video on it. What you need to know is, this is the last and final proper 1GB graphics card, so it's got plenty of modern API support, plenty of power, but for some reason AMD sold this thing with just 1GB of VRAM. If you want to find out more, there is the video on it. But I did start doing a little bit of tweaking around, starting with the graphics card. I tried overclocking things, but unfortunately the example we've got here, it just doesn't budge, so it wasn't really an option and didn't really give us any extra performance out of it. But after I started looking at this, I was trying to analyse how the Red engine actually calls on certain features and actually applies them in-game. And it turns out it is pulling it from two locations. It is pulling it from usersettings.json inside the app data folder, which is quite easy to access and what I assumed things were using. And there is also an option to configure how the engine is loading the graphics by making your own config file for it within the actual game's files. So if you do this within the user part of the game's platform folder, that seems to actually be something it takes on board. So what did I manage to do? Well, it took a little bit of tweaking around, but I first started with the usersettings.json and managed to bring down our field of view and reduce all settings and effects quality down to their very minimums. It doesn't make a huge deal of difference given you can do a lot of this from the in-game settings folder, but you can bring them slightly lower, and reducing the FOV really did help with certain VRAM constraints. After this though, I wanted to get properly into trying to modify the engine as much as possible. So I was able to affect the lighting by turning off global illuminations and distant global illuminations as well. Most reflections I was able to reduce down to their most basic form by turning off screen space reflections almost entirely. Volumetric fog was gone, distant volume fog was gone, and also distant fog had been completely removed. As well as this, I tried my best to modify around the shadow settings as much as possible. It doesn't appear you can completely remove them, but you can reduce the quality and the cooling distance on them so much so they may as well not be there. All of the post-processing has been disabled. The bloom is gone, the motion blur is gone, the chromatic aberration's gone, film grain is gone, lens flare is gone, anti-aliasing is also gone. Also dynamic decals, which did help bring down VRAM usage and reduce a lot of stuttering, those are gone as well. SSAO is also completely disabled in terms of ambient occlusion, and I did a few other little engine side tweaks just to get it to run better on older hardware. The one thing that was very difficult though was lowering the resolution, because the game natively wants to stay in 1024 by 768 and doesn't actually let you set lower than this. After googling around online, it appears that most people agreed the consensus was just to run it with FSR or something like that, which usually I would agree with, but on these GCN1 cards, especially ones that don't have much VRAM, the additional overhead results in worse performance, so I didn't want to use it. I wanted a native 480p image, which you can do by setting the game to initially launch in 800 by 600 windowed mode, forcing that into full screen, then setting the game back to windowed, changing the desktop resolution back to 640 by 480, and then forcing the game back into full screen again, causes the game to actually launch in a full 480p resolution, which of course then I set to integer scaling so it didn't look as hideous as it wanted to originally. And that was us done. We now had Cyberpunk all ready to go, with possibly the lowest settings I've ever seen it run at. I've not downloaded any mods, I've not done anything like that. I've simply done probably far too much research into how this engine operates, and at least how it works on these low VRAM cards. So now I present to you Cyberpunk 2077 on just 1 GB of VRAM. Right, so I do believe I have managed to get Cyberpunk running on 1 GB of VRAM, and I don't just mean running, I mean playable. We're using 640 by 480 as our resolution, as you can see here by this beautiful display, and we do have the R7 370, or HD 7850, whatever you actually want to call it, with 1 GB of VRAM playing Cyberpunk. Now, it's taken a while to get it to this point, and it doesn't look pretty, but if I tab over to Cyberpunk, it will be running, and it will be running in this resolution. Now, it's taken a lot of looking through different INI files, seeing how the red engine calls on different features, seeing what we can actually disable against what we can't actually touch, but a lot of features can be removed from the engine, and they do substantially reduce VRAM usage, and also the overall demand on the graphics card. But step one is going to be running it through the built-in benchmark, where we averaged around 25 FPS before. And I haven't seen how it is going to run, but I'm curious what it is going to do. So off the top of my head, what I have managed to do is I've removed any form of global illumination, most forms of screen space reflections are gone, most forms of any actual effects that aren't basic shadows are now completely gone from the game. It has taken a while to get it to this point, and then trying to make the game understand a 640 by 480 resolution was also a monumental pain. Utilizing FSR might sound like a good idea at first, but then you do have to remember it also has its own overheads that result in worse performance. So we wanted just a native 640 by 480 image, and look at that. It will hover in and around 60 FPS when not much is going on. And to be fair, even with all of these effects disabled, it doesn't actually look that bad. I think one of the reasons for that is primarily the art style and the fact it is meant to be a cyberpunk game. So the fact that things look off kind of works in its favour. But so many people have been saying this game is just untweakable. Every time I've said I'm going to do it and I want to set a challenge of getting this to run on 1 gig of VRAM, they said it's not that type of game. But you know what? I just don't think they were trying hard enough. So what is our overall result in the benchmarks now? We've gone from about 25 FPS up to 44 FPS. And you can see there, GPU memory is quite blurry, 1 gigabyte. I'm happy with that. It is working. This resolution here, 1024 by 768, is the lowest the game can actually report. It is running lower than that. But what happens if we actually go in game? I want to try and load up a little bit of gameplay and see what happens when we actually try and push the game. I think we try and head out, we try a high speed bit of driving. I want to see how it runs when there's lots of action, and then I want to see how it runs when not much is going on. I think those are going to be our big three. Now, I have actually played Cyberpunk. It was a while ago, and admittedly, I played it through on controller, which this would probably lend itself to quite well, given our questionable frame rate. I mean, I don't know how questionable it's going to be when we actually go in-game. Okay, in-game, we're getting around 38 to 40 FPS while we're on the bike. It's hovering in and around the sort of mid-30s. What happens if we try a little bit of combat? What happens then? Oh, it's not letting me actually attack. So previously in this type of situation, we were getting in and around 18 to 20 FPS. And we're now getting between 25 and 35 FPS, which is not actually too bad. To be fair, given the terrible resolution, I was expecting it to run quite a bit worse than this. So combat's not really too bad when not much is going on. It's hovering in and around the 30 FPS region. Okay, that's pretty decent. I'm quite happy with that. So general gameplay, it's a lot more controllable. It looks I don't mind how this looks. Like, it's not the worst looking game I've ever seen. The lack of certain effects, especially ones that, you know, deal with lightings and reflections, aren't great. And I have turned the field of view down low enough that it keeps our frame rate stable enough to be controllable. But what happens if we try and cause just a load of havoc? See what our frame rate goes down to. It's a tricky game to benchmark Cyberpunk because a lot of it is just causing havoc, and the built-in benchmark is not very good at representing it. To be fair, when you are just on foot, walking about, we are getting like 40 FPS. I'm quite curious, what do NPCs look like? I mean, he looks like he's made of wax. It's not the worst thing. Right, what about explosions? Let's see if we can cause some explosions. Okay, it drops down to about 25 FPS with explosions on screen, which is fair enough. What if we max out the wanted level and really try and push things? See if we can get as many guys on screen as possible. I haven't played this game in a hot minute, so it might take me a little while to get used to things. It must be said, though, very controllable. Our frame times aren't phenomenal, but they're better than I was expecting. I mean, it really does just like bouncing between 30 to 40 FPS, but this is where we're going to be putting some real stress on the card, is getting as many people on screen as possible, because it doesn't matter what we do, we are still going to be in a situation where it's got lots of NPCs, it's going to have to make a lot of draw calls, it's just going to have to do an awful lot to stay running. You know what? 24 FPS, a lot more controllable than I was expecting. I mean, I haven't died yet, which is better than I was also expecting. Yeah, you know what? We're up to the maximum wanted level we can get, and it's still hovering between 25 to 40 FPS. Were we expecting 25 to 40 FPS here? I don't know. We got some fella attacking us at the moment. I don't know who he is. He's got a health bar. Is he important? Have we ever fought this guy before? We'll just keep wailing away at him with a crowbar. Yeah, he's not doing too good, I don't think. I think he's just tried bonking us, but we just keep bonking him back. Okay, we took out like a mini-boss. And there's a few other mini-bosses. Okay, even with all of this going on, it is still staying above 30 FPS. I wasn't expecting above 30 FPS here. Yeah, this is actually fine. I mean, it doesn't look great. I've tried my best to set up integer scaling on the graphics card, so it is at least scaling the game properly. But I think this is the worst Cyberpunk can look. Still in and around 30 to 40 FPS. I mean, this really does show the limitations. When you're not in the city, yeah, this is Cyberpunk probably at its... I mean, it looks its worst here. Let's be honest, it does really look its worst. But I'm not going to argue, I'm not going to complain. Oh, that looks appalling, actually. You know what? The game might run better here. It certainly doesn't look better because we are missing so many effects. Can we not have our car? Are we not allowed our car here? I can't remember what save this is from. It is only using 950 megabytes of RAM in these areas though, which explains why the frame rate is probably so consistent. Oh look, we can do a little bit of combat here. How about we do a little bit of combat? I don't know who these guys are. We'll just punch this guy. Oh, our frame rate went up to... Oh look, we're getting like nearly 50 FPS fighting this dude. I don't know who these guys are. I don't know if there's probably a bit of storyline to do with this, but it doesn't matter. We'll just carry on heading this way. Honestly, this is looking like a good thumbnail picture, to be honest. I'm happy with that. Cyberpunk on 1GB of VRAM. It can be done. It is stable. It is playable. It'll hover in and around 30 FPS. But you know what? If this is your only choice, it's a great game and it can be done. I mean, I just wanted to prove people wrong because I quite enjoy these low VRAM challenges. And now I can head off to go on my hollybobs. So, I'm going to call that one a great success. It looks hideous in places, but it could be worse. Well done, everyone. Good job. So there we have it. Yes, Cyberpunk can run absolutely fine on 1GB of VRAM, and I'd imagine the tweaks made in this video would probably help a lot of low-end machines that probably have even over 1GB of VRAM, because I'll be very honest, despite this being the most powerful 1GB card to exist, well, its specifications are also probably a limit in this one particular game. But still, at the end of the day, this has certainly been a bit of a learning curve. As it happens with these modern titles, well, the engines are a lot more locked down, and the options it presents to you are often hidden away or require you to add them back in for them to actually be activated. So it's still a lot of fun to do, but these games, well, one, they definitely want more than 1GB of VRAM to start with, and two, they really aren't designed to be tweaked around this low. But still, at the end of all this, I think the game looked pretty good when you weren't outside the city, probably due to its art style. When you were outside of it, yeah, it looked pretty hideous with these settings. At the same time though, had Cyberpunk came out 10 years earlier, I don't doubt that I could have uploaded this video saying 2x FPS config, double your frame rate with these tweaks, because that's essentially what we've done here. We have doubled the frame rate and made the game look absolutely hideous. But still, I hope you've all enjoyed. This is a bit of a nonsense video, but they're always fun to do. They're more work on these newer games where you just aren't meant to tweak them down, but I've been sat on this card and sat on this idea for so long now that I thought, you know what, it's a good way to round off the month. So thank you all very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and if you've got any more ideas of stuff you want to see run on low VRAM challenges, please do let me know. So thank you all very much for watching, and good night.